Hola amigas, me llamo Stephanie y hoy te voy a enseñar el nuevo colección de Fauve Frida Kahlo. Okay, I'm kidding. I'm not gonna speak in Spanish for the whole video, but hi, hello, my name is Stephanie and today I'm so excited to show you Fauve's new Frida Kahlo collection. If you're new to Fauve, they are a small indie brand that focuses on creating collections inspired by artists or art periods, with the polishes themselves usually inspired by specific artworks. As you can see, this Frida Kahlo collection is pretty large. It is 11 polishes, and most of them are magnetics. We have a couple of shimmers, a couple of flaky mixes, and one new thermal. So as always, I will talk more about the availability of these at the end after comparisons. For now, let me just show you the swatches. The first shade in the collection is called Tethered, and it's an olive jelly base filled with a multichrome shimmer that shifts from a rosy copper to orange to ochre and green at extreme angles, with a dainty sparkle of holo. This one is inspired by Self-Portrait as a Tijuana, Diego in My Thoughts. I absolutely love how well this is translated. Like, the base color of this is just so spot on, and the formula, as you saw, was really smooth, so easy to apply, and very even coverage. It was a touch sheer on the first coat, and on the second you can see a hint of nail line, but I don't think it's enough to do a third because this is a little bit of a darker shade, and it provides the perfect base for that shimmer to really shine. Next up we have Torment, and this is described as a red to orange to amber magnetic with orange to red magnetic flakies, red to black multichrome, and a hint of purple shimmer with dainty holo. This shade is inspired by her piece Without Hope, which depicts Frida being fed while confined to her bed after her accident. I think this polish is perfectly named since you can see her tears and really feel the anguish in this piece, which again I think is translated so beautifully in this blackened base with a fiery magnetic shimmer. The formula on this was great. It was fully opaque in 2 coats and it magnetizes so well since it has a slightly jelly leaning base. I would say it's probably one of my top favorites because I love the extra sparkle in the background and especially those pops of purple shimmer. It was kind of hard to capture them on camera, but they were beautiful. Next up is another stunning magnetic. This one is Frida, which is a berry jelly base filled with a fiery red to orange to gold multichrome magnetic shimmer, orange to red shifting flakies, orange and blue large particle shimmers, as well as a dainty holo sparkle. This one is inspired by Tree of Hope Remain Strong, and I absolutely love this one. Obviously, this color is more focused on Frida's dress, but I feel like you get some of the dark moodiness of the night behind her too. I would say this had a very similar formula to Torment, where it's a little jelly leaning but very pigmented, so it was fully opaque for me in just 2 coats alone. While I normally prefer the velvet effect and do think it's beautiful here, I think I almost prefer this with the cat eye effect just because you get this beautiful contrast. Next we have the one thermal in the collection, and it's called Ancestral. This is inspired by the painting Roots, and you can immediately see the inspiration from her dress. It is so beautiful, and like her dress, this polish transitions between 3 colors. This is actually a trithermal. The color that you see here on my nail is the orange or middle state, but it transitions to yellow when hot and then saffron when cold, which you can start to see at the very tips of my nails, but you'll see more in a minute. This also has a beautiful red-orange shimmer and a dainty iridescent glitter, which I couldn't really tell that much. I just saw the red-orange sort of shimmer in here, which I do think is very pretty and so flattering with this base. And here you can see the nail fully warm in that beautiful bright yellow. The formula was really smooth and easy to work with, but as you can tell, it is a bit sheer, so if you don't want to see visible nail line, I would recommend a blurring base. And here is that gorgeous trithermal banding. It looks so cool, but I would say the more natural color transitions go between yellow and orange for me. Back to the magnetics, the next one we have is Broken, and this is a brown jelly base with a green to teal to purple magnetic, green, aqua, and gold iridescent flakies, green and gold large particle shimmer, and a dainty hollow. This polish is inspired by the Broken column, which Frida painted after undergoing her spinal surgery following her accident which broke her spine and pelvis. This is one of her many disability-themed paintings, and I would say one of the most striking, or at least it was the most striking to me because I feel like this was one of the first paintings that really made me understand the quote, "Art comforts the disturbed and disturbs the comfortable." You really can't look away from how Frida is portraying the pain that she's in. But back to the polish, the formula on this was similar to the previous magnetics, though slightly less pigmented, where I felt like this one needed a third coat, at least in the cat eye effect, but I think it provided really great coverage in the velvet or unmagnetized states. Next we have Viva La Vida, which is inspired by the painting Viva La Vida, Watermelons. This was Frida's last painting she did, finishing it just days before her death at 47. It's a beautifully vibrant piece and message, especially after her life filled with so much pain. I thought this polish was a beautiful rendition, being a vibrant berry jelly base filled with a glowing green to aqua blue shimmer, and I appreciate that the colors aren't a one-to-one recreation, but it still very much fits with the rest of the collection. This had another really lovely formula that was very even coverage and very pigmented for the most part, though still a bit sheer at the same time, so while I think it is passable on 2 coats, you might want to do 3 if you want to obscure your nail line even more. Next we have another magnetic. This one is called Arterial, and it's described as having a blackened berry base with a blue to violet multichrome shifting magnetic and an orange copper large particle shimmer in the background. This one is inspired by the painting The Two Fridas, and I would say that this is another favorite of mine. I feel like I was just talking about it in my fall favorites video about loving this specific shade of dark raisin and how I don't have that many in my collection, so I'm very happy to add another one. I also love this sort of indigo magnetic pigment. I feel like we've seen a lot of it recently, but it's almost always paired with a navy or a black, so I really love the contrast against that dark red toned berry base. Next we have Wounded, which is described as having a charcoal to red multichrome magnetic shimmer and a green to blue aurora shimmer in the background. It doesn't specify if the base color is just black or charcoal, but it is a little bit on the jelly leaning side, as I'm sure you can see here, where there's definitely some visible nail line and it's mostly obscured by the shimmer, but because the shade is so dark, it does build up to be full coverage, nearly fully opaque on just 2 coats. This piece is inspired by The Wounded Deer, which depicts Frida's head on the body of a stag that is pierced with many arrows stuck in the forest. Many people think this piece expressed Frida's frustration over a failed spinal surgery or just frustration over her destiny. While it's obviously very heartbreaking, I think this polish does such a beautiful job at translating this artwork. We have a couple more greens. This next one is called Thorns, and it's inspired by Self-Portrait with Thorn Necklace and Hummingbird. This is described as a forest green jelly base with a red-orange aurora shifting shimmer, light and dark green reflective glitters, green hollow micro shreds, and a red to pink iridescent flaky. This is another one that I absolutely adored. I just thought it was such a beautiful translation of the artwork, and objectively the polish as well is just gonna be up my alley because you know that I love reflective glitters and I don't have a shade of green like this, so it's just so unique to my collection as well, and I love those pops of the pink flakes. The last green we have is Among the Foliage, which is inspired by Self-Portrait with Bonito, which is the adorable parrot on her shoulder. This one is described as an olive jelly base with khaki gold to green multichrome shifting shimmer and a green to gold large particle shimmer, as well as a dainty hollow. You can clearly see the inspiration for this one being the lush foliage in the back. I think this polish captures those shades on the leaves so beautifully. It had a nice formula as well, similar to the other shimmers in the collection, where it's very even coverage, smooth to apply, just a little bit sheer, so even on 3 coats you might still see a hint of nail line. And rounding out the collection is the topper called Untamed, which is a clear base with micro black flakies, black reflective glitter, black holo, and a dainty silver holo. This one is inspired by self-portrait with loose hair, and no surprise, it is a beautiful topper. I love Fauve's toppers so much. This one is admittedly somewhat simple, I guess, just being a black flaky with all this little holographic sparkle in there, but it's still super beautiful. So here it is layered over my bare nail with a base coat, as well as a couple of the other shades from the collection. I think it pairs really well with the darker shades, but I especially loved how it looked over the trithermal Ancestral. It's giving passion fruit in the warm state, but spooky in the cold state. And here are my thumb swatches of the Frida Kahlo collection. I think it's just such a stunning color palette. I love the warmer tones, the earthiness. I know a lot of these also have just a very dark and heavy kind of inspiration, but the vibe is translated so beautifully. Moving on to comparisons, we're starting with Tethered, and I would say the closest in my collection to this is another Fauve called The Kiss, which is from the Klimt collection. That one has a little bit more of a green olive leaning base color. It's also filled with these extra flakies, but the shimmer in that one is pink and not red. Then for Torment, I knew I had to show this next to Crack's Scorchy, which just came out. This is a fiery magnetic, but in a topper, so I am going to be layering this over a black polish just to show you if I can recreate Torment. While the magnetic shimmer looks to be the same, doing 1 coat over black unmagnetized just still allows a lot of the black base to come through. So I guess you can see with Torment, it's not a pure black base, but it's also mainly filled with all these extra sparkles in the back. Frida reminded me the most of Kathleen & Co.'s Release, which is a previous polish pickup shade and one of my favorites from my collection. They are very similar, but not exact dupes. I'm wearing 2 coats of each here, and you can see that Release has a little bit of a lighter, almost pinky colored base, but doing a 3rd coat does deepen it a bit more. The magnetic shimmer is also incredibly similar, and they also have a blue sparkle in the background, but it's a little bit larger in Fauve. Next for Ancestral, I was immediately reminded of a couple of cracked shades, so I pulled out Delicacy and Sardinia, which is kind of a burnt orange crelly, as well as my Blood Aches, which is more of a rust red jelly. It might be a little bit hard to see here because on my nail I wasn't running fully cold or warm, so it's kind of that middle shade of orange, but on the very tips, I think you can tell that Ancestral leans a little bit closer to Delicacy and Sardinia. Since Broken has a bit of a dark green magnetic shimmer, I wanted to show it next to Cracked Polish's Wicked Root, which is mainly for reference. You know, obviously they are very different finishes, so not dupes. I think the closer shade, or at least the one it reminded me of the most, was Sylvanclaw's Egoots, which is a totally different finish. It's more of a micro glitter, but they have a really similar green shimmer head on. They're both filled with a lot of sparkle as well. Sylvanclaw, if anything, is just missing those larger flakies, and the base in that one is also green instead of brown. Next for Viva La Vida, here it is next to Crack's Ghouls Garden, which just came out, and that is a berry leaning magnetic with a blue aqua kind of shimmer. It's similar in theory or color description, but it is a bit darker on the nail, maybe a little more purple. So for a more pink option, I pulled out Deborah Lippmann's I Put a Spell on You, but that one's a little too light, and while it has a green shimmer, it's a little bit more subtle in color and more pearlescent. And lastly, I wanted to show it next to ILNP's Amped, which I thought was the closest ILNP that I had to this. It's more of a lilac purple base color though, but they do have a similar green shimmer. It's just a lot more of a larger sized particle in ILNP and less densely packed, not to mention it's also a magnetic. I would say this color reminded me the most of Penelope Luz's Hush Hush, which is another previous Polish pickup shade. I sadly don't have mine anymore, so enjoy my bestie swatch. Next for Arterial, as I mentioned, we have seen this sort of indigo magnetic shimmer before. The most recent one from Fauve is called Asylum, and I also had to show this next to Mooncat's Epilogue to Utopia, which admittedly looks pretty similar in the bottle at least, because Asylum is just packed with these reflective glitters, but then once you see them on the nail, especially in the cat eye effect, you can tell that Mooncat has that black base, while Arterial is that warm berry purple. I knew neither of these were going to be dupes, but they are a little bit similar in the sense that they both have this very dark berry kind of base color. So the first one that I have is Mooncat's Hell is Other People, which is more of a linear holo with a purpley pink shimmer, and Crack's Mysteriously Me, which also has a purple shimmer, but neither of these compare to the shimmer in Arterial in terms of color or intensity. Next for Wounded, I wanted to show this again next to Cracked Polish's Wicked Root because I thought it was going to be a little bit more similar, at least to Wounded's unmagnetized state. And I was also reminded of Starrily's Ethereal Nights, which is a very dark base with a brighter green shimmer. I would say the shimmer in Starrily and Cracked are a little bit more similar to each other though. Since the shade of green in Wounded is a little bit more of a forest green, I thought to compare it next to Holo Taco's Ivy League as well as Far From the Tree from the recent Holo Renaissance collection. I thought they kind of look similar in the bottle, but they are very different finishes, and again, Wounded has a lighter and more sheer kind of base, so seeing them on the nail, they really don't compare. I felt like I still had something a little closer though, and then I remembered Cracked Polish's Christmas Pickle, which has a very similar base color, a similar green kind of shimmer, but it's filled with these micro glitters that have pops of gold as well as red. The red kind of matches the pops of red in Wounded, but the gold definitely makes it far from a dupe. As I'm sure you probably noticed, Fauve loves to release these shades of green, so I thought the closest from the Van Gogh collection was Cypress. That one has a totally different finish though. It's more of a magnetic shimmer with these flakies that are blue instead of pink. There's no reflective in that one, so this is mainly for reference. I would say the closest shade though is Apocalypse's The Last of Them, which is one of their micro glitters, so it looks very sparkly and almost similar visually to the texture of reflectives, but the color is a little off. I also wanted to see Thorns next to Sylvanclaw's Field of Wonder since I was immediately reminded of that shade being a vibrant, lush kind of green with these gold and pink flakies as well as some reflective glitter, but they're definitely not dupes. Sylvanclaw has much more of a shimmery metallic kind of base that's also a little bit more verdant, and the pink flakies definitely pop more in Thorns. Next for Among the Foliage, here it is next to Cypress, which I still had on my desk, so I figured I could show it, even though it does have, again, more of a blue shimmer and flaky going on. I would say the base in that one is a little bit lighter too. It's not as olivey as Among the Foliage, so I thought that was going to be closer to Apocalypse's Endure and Survive, which has an olive green base with a golden kind of shimmer, but it's a little bit brighter overall. I unfortunately already gave away my bottle of Van Gogh, which does have a similar olive green with a copper shimmer, but that one's obviously a lot brighter. And lastly for Untamed, here it is next to Cracked Polish's Mascara Flakes, which is a tiny black micro flaky topper. I would say this is the most similar in size and density to Untamed because other toppers like Cirque Spotted is a lot more sparse, while Holo Taco has larger black flakies, though it is a smidge more sparse than Untamed. Not to mention it's missing the holographic sparkle, but that's easy to add with a layer or two of Mooncat's Moondust, for example. I don't have a black reflective topper, but other than that, I think you could easily recreate this. So that wraps up my swatches and comparisons of Fauve's Frida Kahlo collection. As always, I can't wait to hear what you think of this release because, like with every other Fauve collection, I am a big, big fan. I really admire and love how Jess can just so beautifully translate the inspirations into nail polishes. I think it's just so cool to see. And she does such a great job at curating the collections where I just always enjoy the color stories, with these obviously leaning into the much darker, warmer tones compared to the blues that we got with Van Gogh. So overall, a big fan, but even objectively speaking, you know, as just polishes, they were really great, as you saw with the formulas being so easy to work with, super pigmented, maybe with the exception of, I think it was Broken, that had a little bit more of a sheer base, but I feel like the rest of them were pretty much easily opaque in just 2 coats, and I just really love to see that. So if you are interested in grabbing any of these, they are going to be available for a limited quantity pre-order starting September 27th at 12 p.m. Eastern. Fauve's pre-orders are a little bit long, where they're 4 to 6 weeks, but it's similar to PPU or HHC. But if you do pick up anything that is in stock or readily available to ship, that'll be a much quicker turnaround, usually 1 to 2 weeks. So I'll have Fauve's website linked down below, as well as my playlist of previous Fauve reviews if you want to check them out. But thank you so much for hanging out with me today. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!